Bob Crawford, first of all, I have a non-podcast related question for you. And it relates to your day job. When you spin your stand-up bass when you're playing live, like you do in Paranoia and B major, how do you practice that? I'm just picturing that is not a skill that's natural. So how did you? I'm picturing a lot of near misses and fallen basses. How do you develop that skill to pull it off on stage?
Well, the hardest part, it's easier than it looks, like it's one of those big, I don't want to call it it's like an illusion, right? Like it just all looks more challenging than it is. Um, but the hardest part is spinning it and then coming back in on the beat
Right.
on the right note, which if you notice, I rarely do. So a lot, it's like feeling that moment and enjoying that moment. And it's something you start doing a long time ago. And then when you don't do it, just doesn't feel the same.
Doesn't
So
that song does not feel the same without that.
it's part of the song. It's part of the song now. And it gets people fired up. I take it for granted. I do it as part of the song. And then I hear a little bit of a elevated cheer. And I'm like, oh yeah, I spun the bass, and people don't see that every day.
This is The Other 51. I'm Brian, and this week my guest is Bob Crawford, bass player for the Avett Brothers and the host of the podcast Founding Son, John Quincy's America. Well, that's a great moment, and although we could talk Avett and music like we did the last time I had you on a few years ago, we're here today to talk about your podcast. First of all, congratulations on hitting 7 years of The Road to Now with Ben Sawyer, one of my original inspirations for this show, actually, and congratulations on making it this far.
Man, as you know, you've been doing this for a while. So, I mean, how many years is it for you?
Just coming up on 7, actually.
Yeah,
you guys launched before me.
It is not easy to maintain this. So, like, people take it for granted that the time that goes into booking a guest, and then researching the guest and asking the questions and editing the episode, and it is a lot of work. And Ben and I, over the years, at times we've had help, at times we haven't had help. So thank you for your congratulations, and I can congratulate you as well. It's something that once you start, and if one person's downloading that thing, you feel an obligation to keep going. So
right.
we no end in sight for us.
Excellent. And for our main purposes here, I wanted to congratulate you on the podcast series that came out a few months ago now, Founding Son, John Quincy's America. And I've got to tell you, for a history nerd like me, man, it is just delightful. It is it's a 6-episode story. I sent it to one of my best friends who's a history teacher, and it was the 3rd episode. It was, this is the nullification crisis podcast you didn't think you needed, but and she loves it too. So thank you. It's wonderful. What's the reaction been like for you here about it?
It has been incredible. And from those people, right? From the historians. That is the great, there are 2 incredible accolades that I've gotten for Founding Son. One comes from the person who goes, I didn't know anything about any of that history.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. It's the revolution, it's the Civil War, and it's like the Civil War just kind of fell upon us. No. And then the other one is from the historians and the historically conscious, if you will, who say, good job, way to tell that story, way to explain that. The biggest challenge, I've been studying this subject seriously for 3 years. I've wanted to make this series for 3 years.
Okay.
And the hardest part for me, when I would be reading, and I've read pretty close to every John Quincy Adams book that I have found, right, that has existed. And the hardest part always comes down to, how do we explain these years-long congressional battles, these battles that take place on the House floor? How do you break this stuff down? It's hard enough to understand policy of the, political and government policies of 2023, let alone government policies of the 1830s and 1840s. So that was the most daunting aspect, is how do you give people good, accurate information, but deliver it in a way that they can understand it and it's digestible. And I think two reasons why we were able to do it on Founding Son is, one, uh, John Quincy Adams is a great vessel for that, right? You
Mhm.
need you need to tell the history through a person. That's the most that's when you really absorb history, and that's when you really get excited about it. It's like, was this person a good person, or was this person a bad person, or were they complicated? They're all complicated. And Adams, for me, is such an intriguing human being, such a complex, but I think the final analysis is he's a good guy. He's a really deep down inside, where I feel like I've spent a lot of time with him. I think he's a good man, and meant, always the public servant, and truly wanted this nation to survive and prosper and achieve its greatest potential. And so the second reason why I think we were able to condense really complex, dense information was because I had an amazing story editor, a guy named James Morrison, who was one of my producers on this project. He works for the Smithsonian. He produces their Side Door podcast. And I was always like, we need to, you know, put this piece of information in, and this piece of information in, and this piece. And he was so good for helping me shape the story, like, keeping it surface level enough to where you didn't just get bored with all the detail. Cause I like to say, I'm fixated on the trees. He helped me see the forest.
So and it's such a wonderful. I was re-listening to some of the episodes this morning as I was getting ready for our chat, and it is such an interesting thing because the podcast is about the era and about that kind of that time. And like you said, when you traditionally learn history, it's like Revolutionary War, War of 1812, and then Civil War, and then there's this gap where all this stuff happens, and using John Quincy Adams as the vessel to tell it, like you said, was because it's about John Quincy Adams, but it's also about Calhoun and Jackson and all of these other people as well. Do you remember the moment when you said you've been researching this era and working on this for a couple of years? Do you remember the moment, kind of aha moment, when you're like, John Quincy Adams podcast?
Well, this came back to me. Apparently, I've said really good things about Martin Van Buren in the past, which came back to me unexpectedly in an interview last weekend. But the book I'm holding up for the people that can't see it is Sean Wilentz' The Rise of American Democracy, Jefferson to Lincoln. And when I got, this is like 2004, I believe, maybe 2005. And when I got this book and first read it, prior to that, I was really interested in history, and I began reading it, but I began with the McCullough, the John Adams, and the 1776 books, which are incredible, but they are Revolutionary War, early
Yeah.
Republic books. And so what Wilentz, that Jefferson to Lincoln book did was it introduced me, like you said, to this era, to this period, and everything that happens from the early Republic to the Civil War. And there's a lot of incredible important events, and then dynamic characters that you meet, and Van Buren is one of them. Van Buren intrigued me early on, not for his presidency, just as John Quincy Adams does not intrigue me and fascinate me for his presidency. But Van Buren intrigues me for his pre-presidency, when he essentially founds the Democratic Party, creates this idea that you have a party infrastructure that goes from the local level to the state level and feeds into the national level. that's a Van Buren
Mhm.
invention. And the idea that you can be, you're behind the scenes pulling the levers of the party. And that to me, it does, he's also the guy who was like, in order to win and build a dominating party, which he creates the Democratic Party. And it's the idea that you have the South and they have their particular interests, first and foremost being slavery.
Right.
And then you have the North and you have Northern men who are okay with that.
Mhm.
And it's this New York, Virginia kind of connection that Jefferson exploits early on that Van Buren revisits and defines American political history from Jackson's election in 1828
Mhm.
until the end of the Whig Party and the beginning of the Republican Party. When you have a 1856, you have the first sectional party. And around the 1856, 1860 is kind of when that party amalgamation, if you will, kind of breaks.
Mhm.
The fever breaks, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm reminded by it since we're showing off our history books. I'm reading Team
Yes.
of Rivals right now, and I'm just at that point, just going into the convention of 1860, and I didn't realize this reading this book that Lincoln was also very strong in organizational politics and kind of in that kind of Van Buren style. So,
Lincoln was a politician.
mhm.
He was a political operator. That we think of Lincoln as being this unifying figure above politics. No, he was a politician, and he was like that period. Like he serves one term in Congress with John Quincy Adams,
Mhm.
1846, 48, something like that, maybe 45 to 47. But and then he leaves, the federal government, and he runs for statewide office in Illinois, where he tries to get in the Senate twice and he fails at that. But it's that he was very active in Whig politics. When John C. Fremont was the 1856 Republican candidate, he stumped for him. He went around and spoke out for him. And Lincoln was always giving speeches. He receives like 170 some votes for vice president in 1856 to be on the ticket. So it's not like Lincoln wasn't a known quantity in American politics. He just he wasn't one of these Sewards
Right.
or Salmon Chase
Mhm.
or some of these other guys who were better known.
So next time you're in upstate New York, by the way, we'll have to meet up at the William Seward House in Auburn. It's
I would love to.
restored and beautiful, and Seward's an interesting guy. But we're going down rabbit
Very much
holes.
so.
We're going down rabbit holes here, which is not bad. But we
That's
have time
me,
constraints.
right?
Yeah,
You hang out
same.
with me, you're gonna get down some rabbit holes.
So that the book you were reading when you were interested in Van Buren, then what makes John Quincy Adams start to stand out for you and start to think that this is a story worth telling in a podcast?
At some point, I had the realization that blew my mind that Adams is appointed minister to the Netherlands by President George Washington, and he serves in Congress with Abraham Lincoln.
That's crazy.
And if you walk up to anyone in the street and tap them on the shoulder, and they'll probably be like, "What is this guy doing, invading my personal space?" But you say, "Hey, I want you to shut your eyes and I want you to think of George Washington." They're going to get one period of American history in their head. Then if you ask them, okay, now think about Abraham Lincoln, they're going to get a completely different vision of America in their head, or they should. And you say there was one guy who served with both those guys. There's one man. He is the bridge. And then the deeper you go into Adams, like, okay, he was a failed one-term president. Then he goes into Congress after his presidency. Several congressmen have become president. One president has become a congressman. Andrew Johnson, just so the people that know everything out there don't call me on this. Yes, Andrew Johnson served in the Senate after he was president for 5 months and then passed away. John Quincy Adams served in the House for 17 years and then passed away in the House, in the Capitol. So I guess in the parlance of our times, Adams is a baller. I haven't even scratched just what I just said in the past 2 minutes, hasn't even scratched the surface of why this man is endlessly, and to this day, I'm still studying him. After this series has come out, I'm still studying him and his time. So endlessly fascinating to me and for me.
So you get this idea, you kind of figure out that this is the area you want to talk about. John Quincy Adams is kind of like the person to focus on as the story, for the story. What are your next steps in terms of researching? Did you always kind of have it in your mind this was going to be a podcast? Did that idea come later? Like how did your research process work out?
Yeah, I pitched it a few different times at a few different places, and my pitch was, he served with Washington and Lincoln. Like, what else do you need me to tell you? And they, how podcast people are, they were like, well, are there any murder trials in his family's history? Are there any true crime aspect to it? People love true crime. My wife loves true crime. And so I pitched it to iHeart and rewrote the pitch. We decided the Amistad case maybe would be a good way in to him, because the Spielberg movie, though beautiful, is historically flawed, to say the least. So I wrote a second pitch, the true story of the Amistad. And I heard nothing, like radio silence, like, don't call us, we'll call you. Like, I had forgotten about it. And then out of nowhere, iHeart called and said, hey, we want to do John Quincy Adams. So, and then it was just fast and furious, and we just jumped right into it.
So I have to say, when you held up the copy of your book, all the little plastic tabs that you have there just made my Professor heart just sing with with
I got
joy.
One for you. And I'm going to hide the title because this could be the next one.
Okay. Oh, that's impressive.
This right here, this book, this outlining, all these the little notes, a lot of pink, what do they call those things? Sticky notes?
Yeah.
All these sticky notes. This was that last week on tour.
Oh, wow.
That was 1 week. What do I do when I'm on tour and I'm not on stage? That's what I did last week.
That's impressive. So did you, when you sat down and started doing this podcast, or you're thinking about the next one, like, did you have a 6-episode arc in mind? Did you kind of have a natural beginning end? Did you kind of approach it more open-ended? Like, how do you approach this era, this story, this person, condense it into 6 episodes?
Well, what was really great about this project is we had weekly meetings.
Okay.
And that really helped me think through things that I needed to think through. And at first we talked about 8. And then as we storyboarded, 6 seemed, and we almost did 7.
Okay.
But we felt like we wanted to hold people's attention. And, the studies that they've done at 30 minutes is pretty good for that. And it's amazing how much ground you can cover in 30 minutes. Well written, well outlined. Like, figuring out the organization of a project, be it, I imagine, a book. I know in these podcast series, the 2 big ones I've done, it's organization going in, having the story arc organized and storyboarded out really, really helps you and guides you as you move forward. So then once we figured, okay, 6 episodes, here's a rough outline. Then we knew when we started booking guests, what do we want to ask each particular, like, what do we need to cover? We need to cover the early history, Lindsay Chervinsky. Nobody better, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need an Adams expert, James Traub. author of Militant Spirit. Incredible. Great
Mhm.
speaker as well, I believe.
Mhm.
We need to cover the abolitionist movement. Richard Newman from Rochester
Yep.
Institute of Technology. Great historian and another great voice. I had to get my Bob Dylan of historians in, Sean Wilentz. And again, no one probably has a better grip on that or better perspective on that era as a whole than Sean Wilentz. So once we knew what the arc was going to be and what the organizational structure was going to be, then we knew who we needed to get to talk on it and how to balance them in the episodes.
So what are some of your organizational methods or tips? Like you have a project like this. How did
Right.
you and and the people you worked with, how did you like, was it outline? Was it note cards? Was it digital? Like what did you do to actually organize all this?
So going back to or not James Traub, James Morrison, Miro, we used Miro, he and I, and
Okay.
he was really, because he worked for NPR and said he worked at Smithsonian. And so I had never done that before. Like when I did Concerts of Change, I basically did a Google Doc outline for each episode. um, and I know a lot of writers people who write books, and they do like note cards or sticky notes.
Mhm.
I've done sticky notes before, and you put them on the wall,
Mhm.
and it helps you kind of see things. But we did Miro which is an app or a program that you can do that helps to storyboard things out.
Okay.
And that's what we used for this. But everything you do, you learn something from.
Mhm.
And so when this book and maybe the next project, while I was reading a book about it, I have two books about the subject, but when I was reading this initial book, I would do a sticky note in the book on the page with the page number cited.
Mhm.
And then what I'll do when I go to outline this thing or when I go to storyboard it, I'll take out all the sticky notes and I'm just going to lay them out.
Gotcha.
And then I know where I reference this from the book. I know where it is in the book. And then I have the kind of the topic, it's accessible. And then I'm working on another thing, and it was one of the things where it was the kind of thing that a lot about it, but you don't have a foothold yet.
Yeah.
When you want to tell a scene, the story of a scene. And I read this on Twitter, I hate to say, but it's like this writing, it's like a little writing Twitter channel or whatever, a Twitter handle, but it's like all tips for writers. And they had the guy from, his name escapes me, but he wrote most of the Simpsons episodes. And he said what he does is he'll just write a script and he'll put like bad jokes in, just put placeholders. So he just to get it on the paper.
Right.
He writes a script and it's like the most staid lines and quotes and it's, just really basic stuff. And then you have a script.
Right.
And then you go back and then you plug in the funny content and the ironic humor and the some of the more character defining qualities. And so I was really like this whole week, it's really crazy. Like I outlined this book last week, and then for this, I wanted to develop this scene for something else. And I was really banging my head against the wall that I couldn't get a foothold.
Mhm.
And then I just thought of what I read that guy say. And I just started writing 2 days ago. And I just didn't worry about quotes. I just wrote it really basic, like just what I know about it. And then I went back and I added meat on the bones, if you will. And I feel like I've got a really great foothold in what I'm working on. And that just comes from doing these projects.
Mhm.
Like the more of these projects I do, the more little tricks I kind of figure out.
So if you had a seventh episode to this, what story did you want to have about this era, about John Quincy Adams, that you had to cut for story arc, for time, for whatever?
Sure, three big things. Um, for Adams's sake, we had to cut the Smithsonian.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
Adams is absolutely instrumental in the creation of the Smithsonian.
Mm-hmm.
All those amazing museums that you can go to for free in our nation's capital, the incredible resources they are online. That's all in large part to Adams. Like this man, James Smithson, sent a bequest of a large sum of cash to Congress and said, do something for America. And it was Adams who guided it to be what became the Smithsonian. And so that did not get, and I knew early on, I was like, we're just not going to have time for this.
Right.
The bank war,
Mm-hmm.
we did not have time for it. And then there's a really interesting thing that happens, I believe, in 1835, maybe 34, 35. And Jackson, who's president, almost goes to war with France.
Really?
Over, as best as I recollect, because I haven't read about this in a while. But France owed America a lot of money, and this is based on our treaty with France, and they had not paid up. That's the most basic way for me to tell that.
Yeah.
And Jackson is playing hardball with France, and he is being very threatening to them. Give us our money, or you're going to regret it, basically. And most of Congress and Jackson's own party does not support him in this. And they don't want to allocate any money for military fortifications. There's one man who champions the cause of this. It is John Quincy Adams, who hates Andrew Jackson.
Right.
With a passion. With a passion. But this shows you that Adams was a man of the whole Union, and that he didn't really care about himself, his personal feelings. It was about what's great for America, what's right for America. And so he stuck up for Jackson and defended and tried to get like $3 million allocated for fortifications.
So we'll wrap this up with the question I ask all of my guests. What is the best thing you've read lately?
Well, I'll tell you something really cool that you can do and your listeners can do. You go to, I believe it's newspaperarchive.com.
Okay.
And you can, and it costs a little bit of money. There's a, monthly or yearly. It's not much. It's less than Netflix. And you can access not every newspaper, but man, I've never seen a public archive going back to the 1700s. But and I'm able to find a lot of the stuff from the 1830s and 40s I'm looking for. And of course, the more recent you get, the more easy it is to find this stuff. But when you read a book like The Rise of American Democracy, or a book about John Quincy Adams or Andrew Jackson, and you look at the footnotes and you'll see a newspaper footnoted, it's so cool to go on there and read the actual newspaper article.
Right.
And then you start reading like specific newspaper articles or particular ones. And then you start just looking at the newspaper and you're looking at the ads.
That's the best part. Yes.
The best part. And it shows you that we are the same people.
Right.
We're the same people. We're the same damn people from the 1830s and 40s. We have not changed. And I would probably suspect we're the same people from the 1730s and 40s, and the same people from the 1630s and 40s. The human history, maybe history doesn't repeat. Maybe the thing is human beings haven't changed.
That's great. We'll have a link to that in the show notes, and we'll have a link to all of the episodes and all of your other podcasts. Bob, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you down the road.
All right, Brian, it was so much fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to The Other 51. Special thanks to Bob Crawford for joining me this week. You can find links to his podcast in our show notes or wherever you're listening to this. Oh, and you should totally see the Avett Brothers live. Just trust me on that one. If you like our show, you can give us a rating on your podcast app of choice. Our theme music is by Ellie Moritz.